Welcome. One job. So we've just had many jobs happening here. So we have Mr. Joe here,
Lighting, right?
and I'll sort out the lighting in a second. Hello. So, welcome. We've just actually been tracking, and we've got some mood lighting here in the background there, and we'll sort that out. But Mr. Joe will be here very shortly. So, if you've got any questions about mixing, etc., hey Sabrina, how you going? In America, all the way in Chicago. How are you, Sabrina? That's awesome. So, as many of you have been following, I'm just doing some real live documenting of tracking a new record. Been incredibly blessed. There's been a lot of people around. Hey, Toby in California, how are you? Mike, how are you, sir? Hey, Michael, how you going, sir? And Glenn, how you going, Glenn? Legend. And yeah, so this is real life documenting of the process of making a record. I've got Mr. Joe. He's up from Sydney. I live in Brisbane, so that's about 1,000 kilometres for the American folk. That's about 600 miles, and in English, that's too far to walk. So, hey Toby, hey Chris. So if you've got any questions about mixing and getting all things geared up for recording, Joe has lots and lots of credits, and he's going to turn on some lights in a second. And one job. Afternoon, lads. How you going, Chris? And so from my perspective, actually, it's a middle one. Is it on at the wall? He's very good at mixing, but turning lights on is another story. So, there's one just right in front of it on the wall here, straight underneath the black curtain. Yeah, so from my perspective, what was different about recording with Joe is that, yes, you have your idea, you have your demo, and then so we tracked this record. Everything is played completely live drums, live bass, featuring on the record. Hey, there's lights. There we go. Featuring the record is Bevan Davison playing drums, did a sensational job. On bass guitar is Marshall McAdam, also called Shady McFingers. Hey, Graham. How you going, Graham, in Sydney? How are you? And the sound is overriding. My vocal, is it? Am I too loud? It's duplicating. Okay. Let's see if I can fix that up. That's probably because I've got Facebook open in the background. Here we go. Get rid of that. Does that solve the problem now? Is it okay now? I know why. Because I need to have headphones plugged in. Here we go. Thank you, Sabrina, for saying that. That's good. That should be fixed now. No, not too loud. Okay, it should be all good. So, any questions about recording, please ask about now. Mr. Joe is here. So, and I'll just finish off the story is for my original music that was played, anything that was in the original demo was flicked and destroyed, and Joe asked us to play something different. And at first it was extremely, putting outside the box. What's your favourite slogan? Don't play anything pedestrian.
Don't play anything else. Don't play something that everybody else would play.
Yeah, right, okay, cool. Had to block our friend Larry. Okay, cool. No problem. Okay, cool. So, questions. Does anyone have any questions about recording, etc.? I must say that from the mixing point of view, from tracking, going into mix mode, for most of you who are recording music at home, I used to start automating straight away, and I've now been shown a completely different way. It still duplicates. Sounds weird. Has anyone else got a sound issue? It's kind of weird that we're... No? Yes? Graham? Is Graham online? How's this audio sounding? There's a 40-second delay from when we ask. So, so EQing drums and bass. So maybe, do you want to maybe explain what's the first thing that you do when you're doing that? Recording. And from mixing point of view. So everything's tracked. Sounds fine. Hello, Jane. How you going, Jane? And Susie saying it's all good. Hey, Susie. And audio's great. Hell to you both. Thank you for sharing this information. Oh, hello, not hell to you. One job. Press the O key. Mate, one job. About recording, when did you first get your first recorder? Okay, oh my God. No, but anyway, so building a mix from the bottom up, what's the first thing you do?
Well, first thing for me is the kick drum. We try and get a nice toppy and meaty kick drum, and then we blend the bass into it, make sure that both sit as one, so to speak. If you're doing country, well, you start with the vocal, get that vocal sound really nice, and then build the band in. But for rock and stuff, I always start with the bass drum and the kick, and then we add the snare, which covers mids, and the hi-hat, which covers the top end, and then we try and put everything else in that mid put everything else within those boundaries there. What do I think about Reaper? I don't use Reaper, but I know a guy who uses Reaper, and he swears by it. He reckons it's great, great value for money. I do believe it's very cheap, and if you're using it professionally, it's not that expensive either. So it's I've heard only good stuff from it, and it's not too bad.
Okay, cool. And getting back to the mix, I'm just saying from my perspective, being the understudy for Joe, is we started with the kick drum, we added the bass guitar. I should be doing it this way. Anyway, details. Kick, bass, snare, then hats, which was actually brand new information for me. We've got a question there, Bergie, I'll be 1 second. And then adding the guitars next, which was actually groundbreaking for me, so that the mix was all centered, and then you feel the mix in the stereo field. So that was really cool, because usually I feel the stereo field, then I try and
push everything in.
Yep. So here we go. Bergie says, as an amateur, to record 6 songs, ballpark, start to finish, for a semi-good quality, you know what I mean?
For an amateur, well, it depends on how much the amateur knows. But just for a demo, you should be able to do 4 songs in a day easily. If it's just a demo, if it's a band, 4 songs. If it's individual, it may take a little bit longer, but 1 to 2 days, and it should be all fine, really. Just 1 day for recording and 1 day for mixing, as just demos.
If you know your stuff.
Yeah.
And hopefully that answers your questions there, Bergie. And sorry, you go.
If it's just an acoustic guitar, you could do at least 20 songs in a day, easy.
Yeah, right.
For a demo, yeah.
You must be a genius on the guitar.
No, if it's a demo.
Okay. And it says, could Joe be any more chill? The master of chill. That's exactly right. And Bergie says, that's awesome. Couldn't get in. Okay? I don't know what that means. Maybe the front door keys are lost. I'm not sure. But guitar-wise, what's the best heavy guitar sound so far that you've recorded? So just Marshall and a Les Paul?
Oh, yes.
Crank to the moon.
For rock and roll, there's only one sound, a Marshall on 10 and a Les Paul. That's it. There's nothing better than that. Mind you can't be in the room at the same time, but well, you wear earplugs.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, with the tracking, that was quite fun, actually, using real amps on 11 or 10.
Yeah. And
Graham's got a question. Could you explain gain staging?
Gain staging. Are you talking about signal to noise in that respect? But gain staging, I would imagine that you would want to get the best signal that you can, and using the gain properly, as opposed to just having how do I put this? Having a clean signal loudly and having a good amount of signal on present will eliminate any noise that you may have. So if you don't have the right amount of gain in there, you're not really hearing the signal properly. What happens when you turn it up? You may get a lot of noise from the bottom, I think. That would be...
gain staging?
Yeah. and with say the analog desks, you'd have a gain and a fader. You put the fader at 0, and then you dial in your level, and that will give you great signal to noise ratio, and you're hearing the signal as it should be. I hope that explains something.
Any other questions about tracking or recording or miking up an amp? I think that was a good question the other day. But choosing an amp head, because I might have a few guitar amp heads here. So when we were tracking, we plugged into a Steve Vai Legacy amp, and I may have blown one of those up actually. I think one of the power valves with one job, and the guitar amp melted on cue. So I had an Engel and a Bogner and a Marshall. I can't even remember the other amp we had plugged in, but you decided to, we plugged in the Daisy Cutter amp. Oh man, I should probably get this out. This is hardcore. Oh, did we end up using it? It was too gainy.
I don't know, but we did have it there.
Here's a Daisy Cutter. This thing is only 10 watts, and this thing you can cook your dinner on. It's so damn hot. Yeah, so, so what was my question? Why did you choose that amp?
Oh, Graham's asked.
Oh, Graham's got another question.
No, just down.
Oh, my job. I'm only been trying to achieve negative 6 dB for your overall mix. Okay, forget about the guitar amps. Let's
Well, just to achieve a minus 6 dB, well, I always start with a kick drum around minus 7 dB or minus 5 dB, depends on the music, because if you have that as your
bass
benchmark, everything else sits around it, so your mixes shouldn't go any further than minus 5 and minus 4 at the end of it. So that's I'm just trying to read your question there again, Graham. It's all right. So that's the problem. A lot of times you will have a problem if you don't compress certain peaks and transients, which will drive sometimes 6 dB over where your mix is, and then all of a sudden you have a problem. But if you start around about minus 7, minus 5 dB with kick drums, or minus 7 for vocals, you shouldn't ever get past minus 4 or minus 3 with your final mixes, and you always need that for your mastering anyway, so you need a little bit of headroom there.
And I must say, with doing this mix, before I would set up a mix blind. Hey Deborah, how you going? And Martin, hey Martin, and Toby and Sabrina, Jane, hello Martin. Oh, that's from Jane. Hello Martin. Setting up the kick at a relative level, because before I would just turn it up and go, oh yeah, rock and roll, that's good. You just start somewhere. And so howdy, it's the Jamley again. Yes, it is. I reset my iPad. Sounds great. Awesome. Okay, cool. So about the guitar amps, what made you choose the Bogner? Like, what qualities were you listening for doing the lead guitar lines for the melody guitars?
Probably a little bit more bite, one would say. Just
more shark attack.
Yeah, so we didn't have to really do much in the EQ stage. I'm a great believer in getting the sound that you want to start with, without having to EQ it later. Because the less work you have to do in a mix, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. And we've got some more questions here. It says here, Graham says, yep, that's awesome. Cool. And what about, what's something that you hear people do incorrectly from maybe being a bedroom producer? Because are we allowed to talk about your book, etc., and all that kind of stuff?
A bit later. But as a bedroom producer, I would say what Graham was asking about gain staging, and also, as I was saying before, signal to noise ratio, because although most of the stuff in the bedroom producers is sampled and whatever have you, the same thing still has to apply, that you have to have enough signal in there so you can hear it without having to turn it up in the mix. Because when you turn it up in the mix and it gets squashed in mastering, all of a sudden all the noise comes up and you hear what you don't want to hear, or what you haven't heard really beforehand.
Right.
And also, tuning your room is very important for the
Yes.
for the house producer, because rooms react differently. I think Graham did some tuning with me, and he can probably tell you that his mixes are quite good outside his little studio. I've heard them; they sound quite good. But beforehand, there was a little bit of a bump there. But trying to tune your room is best. There was a question last time about tuning your room. There is proprietary things you can buy, and also there are free programs, but you have to buy a microphone, a reference mic for that.
Yeah, because we actually used Sonar. I've got the Sonar Works kit, which actually worked quite well, don't you think?
Sorry?
They work quite well, the Sonar Works.
Oh, yes.
Referencing for the room.
Analog plugins.
Analog plugins. How is the process, Joe?
Geez, you'll have to explain yourself a little bit more. I'm not sort of understanding what you're talking about there.
Well, I can say, I think analog. Sabrina's going. Hey, Sabrina. Thanks for checking in, Sabrina. It's 1:50 a.m. Chicago right now. That's amazing.
Graham said.
And Deborah.
Graham never sounded better.
Yes. Thanks, Graham. Bathroom is cool sometimes. Yes. I've never sounded better. So, yeah, with the plugins, with this mixing exercise, I've used the SSL plugin channel strip, Universal Audio. I don't know how many plugins that I've got, nearly 30 versions of it. There's probably about 30 tracks. Was it 28 tracks?
28 tracks. No, actually, 28 to 31.
31 tracks, this mix. 31 tracks. And it only started off at like 7 or something. But it's multiplying. And what we got here. Does that answer your question there, Martin, about what tracks, or about the analog?
Are you asking what to use or what not to use?
I am not used analog plugins, and does it work digital and convert the process?
So you've never used plugins at all, because even analog plugins are digital plugins. But
Really?
Well, they're all digital realm. They're just models.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Hopefully that helps.
Look, it does it really matter which plugin you use? Yes, for overall sound, it does. We used basically just one channel strip. Doug used to use a lot.
Yes. There we go.
Doug used to use a lot of plugins, each separately. They will all give you a different sound. It depends on what you want. I'm not too. I'd really like to know the nitty gritty of what he wanted to know, though.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Oh, we'll come back to so yes, Martin has used plugins and heaps. I must say, we got a question here from Marshall. Marshall played bass on this track, and got some more acoustic panels arrived today, Marshall. Did you settle on one Universal Audio SSL channel strip for all the tracks?
I did.
Yes.
Yes,
and I must say, by settling on one plugin, I've never done that before. I just it's like shopping in IKEA. I'll have a bit of that, rock and roll. Should be good. But this is the first exercise I've actually used one plugin strip, channel strip, just made up a new thing, and learn it. Actually learn the plugin. Before, I can honestly say I'll just keep turning knobs and cool, excellent. But actually learning the plugin, because at the end of the day, people have spent 100,000 hours with developers trying to model the actual physical hardware, and by doing it on every single instrument, you get the same tone for a start. And I'm not saying this is to be done forever. I'm just saying it was great to learn the plugin. Yeah. What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, look, I've started with the channel strip and ended up with another 3 or 4 plugins on top of it. But it's just, yes, need modules are yummy.
Yes.
SSLs are nice. Yummy. Again, this getting
like ice cream. Hey, Graham.
Getting back to your plugins, Martin. using just say all Neve plugins will give your mix a particular sound. That's why people used to go to a Neve studio or an SSL. People used to record on Neves and mix on an SSL. It really it does colour your sound and gives you a uniform tone about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, uniform, you said there. So many questions, Joe, hard to write. What's this? And hard to write so much. And has anyone else got any mixing questions of sort? So I must say, so going through this process of editing everything before you start mixing. Because someone may have wanted to do the guitar solos again for the third time, and we've just listened to another track, and someone might want to redo the guitar solos again on the other track. Editing, like, has to be done. And I think it's, for workflow, I think that was really good not to, get put off. Go, I might have to do this now. Just stick to the mix. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Just a bit of history. Like, people might think that when they use tape that they didn't actually edit the sounds. They actually did. They would go in between, say, tom sounds and erase the parts between the toms. Right? It was a very laborious type of work, and then automation came in, which was really good. That's solved a lot of things. But cleaning up the sounds, making them distinct, making them not have noise in them, is pretty important.
And speaking, here we got a question here. I used Samplitude at home of forever, but old school budgets. Samplitude. Yeah, I remember using Samplitude back in the day. That's good. Oh, maybe a good question is what DAWs do people use? Digital audio workstation. Do you use like Pro Tools, Logic, Cakewalk? Do they still use Cakewalk? I'm not sure. Cubase. Reaper. Can you do a QnA specifically for vocals?
Yeah.
Well, just ask the question.
Ask the question. I'll give you
so
an answer.
Here's something about vocals, is actually setting up compressors. So we actually did a double stack so this is specifically for recording vocals. For this track I'm singing on, is that the first compressor was to set up to crush all the transients, right?
Yeah, crush all the transients so it doesn't peak your mix out. And the next one, you set it up nice and quick, just to grab this transient, and then you have another one which is offset a little bit, so it picks up the rest of the signal and compresses it normally at a normal 3-to-1 rate.
Yeah. And another thing we did was double track the vocals.
Yes.
And you specifically said 49 seconds. Is there a reason for that?
Because that's where it sounds right, as a doubling thing.
At 49 milliseconds. Yep. And we have here high speed and hopefully low signs to signal to noise.
Yes.
Yeah. Martin, there's something wrong with your A on your keyboard there.
You just hit the S instead of...
All right. One job. What are you doing, Martin? What are you doing? So any more questions? What about vocals? What else can you say about the vocals? So about the compressors, and also with tracking the vocals, for some reason, when I was tracking the vocals, I had an American accent.
You come from the deep south.
Oh, yeah, man. So that was actually quite, I don't know, when I sing covers, it just happens. I guess because I'm used to hearing the songs that way.
Yeah.
But when you're singing your own songs, it's actually, it was kind of weird to actually change all the phonetics. So the O and all that kind of business. And here we go. We got any more questions? I still have new old school MT4. That's a 4-track recorder, isn't it?
Is that the cassette one?
Yeah, I think so. Back in the day. Any other questions about on mobile? Excellent. Any other questions about recording in the process of maybe setting up your sounds or dialing in the sounds? And I was going to ask you too about the bass guitar. What do we do differently about bass? And is there any other recording bass tricks?
What do we do differently apart from adding the cab, reamping and adding the cab? we made sure that the cab and the original DI were lined up properly, because there's always a little bit of a delay, so therefore you get a little bit of phase issue. And then for this track we added a little bit of gating to the bass to get it nice and clean and thumpy.
Yep. And also, here's a question, because, you know, with your SSL, like what's the most amount of tracks you've had in one session?
Recorded tracks.
Yeah.
Let me have a look. First pass through, or are you talking about in total?
Oh, in total, crank it up.
Oh, I never tried to get past 32 or 33, 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we've nearly hit the limit at 31 tracks.
Well, that's all you need, really. You know, like, unless you put every single noise on a track like they do in movies. Like, you know, they've got 178 individual
Sounds
and that they mix. You know, like, and they may be only half a second long.
Right. Okay, with the door opening or someone dying or something.
Yeah. So, but for music generally, you know, if you get to 32, 33,
that's probably where the ceiling is.
Yeah, that's probably more than enough.
And what's another good question? What about a gear meltdown? Have you had any gear fail on cue, like I did with my guitar amp?
Oh, yeah. I suppose over the years there's been a few, yeah.
No actual fires in the studio?
No. I've had a few burnt out chips. Not a very pleasant smell.
Yeah, right, okay, cool. So was that from running the gear too hot, or just no maintenance or something like that?
Oh, it's not the no maintenance, it just happens, you know.
Yep.
You know, like some transistors die and decide to smoke.
I'll just put here any questions. I'm just typing that in. So, there you go. Any questions, or specifically related to mixing and recording,
or whatever you want.
Yeah. For those who are just tuning in, so Joe actually has a plethora of that's a big word, of clients that he has worked with, and obviously all your editing studios as well had massive people through there, famous people, and he's very, very modest, so he doesn't want me to say.
Logic better than Pro Tools.
Are you liking Logic better than Pro Tools? Yes.
Well, I'd ask Doug if he likes Logic once he's used it for a mix properly.
Tell you what, there's some things that Logic does that's not very logical.
Yeah.
It's some of it's not very intuitive, like turning up. So once you've done edits, I want to turn up the whole edit. So I've got edits everywhere. I just want to turn it all up. You have to go hover over this one little bit, and if you don't, you screw it up. So there was a few little bits of swearing then, but other than that, I like Logic for like being creative. And
it's like anything. It's what you get used to.
Yeah,
you know, it's what you get used to.
And yeah, what about Graham? Because I guess Graham actually helped at one stage. Had to phone a friend.
Yes.
About sorting something out. But did some VCA tracks, Graham, and had to put them in the mix so we could automate them. So that was kind of cool. Martin says op amps are toasted. And what do you use, Joe? Software to record multi-track?
Tools.
Pro Tools, Revenge on You, Duck. Yeah.
So what did he say? What do you use, Joe? Software?
Yeah, what do you use, Joe? Software to record multi-track?
Well,
Pro Tools?
Yeah, Pro Tools. I use a Focusrite interface as well.
Yeah.
So that's good. For me, I've been using Pro Tools since Pro Tools 4, I think. So it's up to about 12 now. So it was like 96, I think.
Yeah,
I started using tools.
96?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think
that's a long time.
It is.
Yeah, I've been using Logic for a while, and they keep changing stuff, and so it's always a learning curve. Pro Tools, Revenge on You, Doug. Yes, absolutely. So that's one thing about with the automation is getting, how we looked at the normalization. So what's your process on to normalize or not normalize?
Well, I like to get toms all up in the same amplitude, because sometimes tom hits aren't always at the same volume. So I tend to do that. But generally, I just normalising. I don't really normalise a lot unless it's, as I said, very, very quiet and I need to boost the signal up. But yeah, normalising is not something I use apart from toms.
Yeah, and maybe effects. We should. If anyone else has got any questions about effects, I got to get a fix. That's awesome. I got to fix a Mate's 8 I/O interface. Yes, absolutely. You should do that. Effects. What I've noticed on this track that we've just done, because Joe's been here helping with. When I say helping, he was mainly doing the work and I was watching. However, not so true in some of the cases. Not so true. The effects. I was actually very, very surprised about the process of mixing, getting all the sounds, individual EQ wise, and so they're in the sonic spectrum, but then to specifically use effects for depth of field. So this was a great exercise, because normally my mixes were covered in post edits, Mr. Squiggle, on medication with drawings everywhere. However, this time it wasn't so much.
Yeah, we only used 2 delays and 2 reverbs,
which was quite phenomenal. Yeah. Do you have any preferred EQ settings with reverb?
I do.
Which are?
You roll off the bottom end, and you roll off the top end.
What's the? Remember you telling me about there's an English version of reverb versus the American version? Because one goes to 8K, one goes to.
This is this is sort of like cymbal roll off.
Yeah.
Right. United States, they tend to roll off at around 12, 8, but in England they roll off cymbals at around about 6, and they sound nice and warm. They still sound like cymbals. They don't take your head off when they hit them.
Still sound like cymbals.
Yeah, they don't take your head off when they're played.
Okay, fair enough. And EQ settings. Well, we actually had to change the EQ settings because with the EQ plugin, what was different for me, so instead of using the original sample, so the sample comes into the effects unit, instead of having that go out a full spectrum, it was actually tailored. But then later on we changed the tailoring.
But look, some reverbs are quite warm, and when you have them up loud enough to hear, they tend to muddy the mix up. So sometimes you roll them off, pretty high, 400-500 hertz. Sometimes at down 200. It depends on what you're doing. If you're just having a vocal, you want that rich room sound to come through, so you may not roll off that much. Do I compress FX? Yes, sometimes I do. Yeah, sometimes I do. It depends on what it is, but there's no reason why you can't compress or EQ your reverbs and effects. No reason.
Okay. And we've got here, what bit depth and sample? Well, we've had this discussion. So to 48K or not to 48K? Where does 48K come from?
48K comes from video work. Audio work, 44.1.
Okay, cool.
88.2, right, is fine. It has a bit to do with what's the word? Crunching the numbers in the end. 44.1, 88.1, 88.2, down to 44.1.
Who's got here 24-bit 96K?
Well, 24-bit 96K, yes, nice, yes, very nice. Takes up a hell of a lot of room, but not too many people can discern anything over 44.1.
So we actually had this.
24-bit is good. 16-bit, it's all right too. That's they reckon that the limit of human hearing, basically.
Do you have your book with the that funny graph?
The Fletcher Bunsen.
Yeah, with the funny graph in there. So I found out this scientific phenomenon about hearing, about the perception of sound. So what you actually perceive to be loud. Yes, even crunching. This is actually really, really cool. This is going to be a science lesson. So Joe's actually written a book, and we've been doing lots of filming for this book, behind the scenes and stuff, and using this music that's been recorded as an example. So the byproduct is I'm learning a lot, because the author, being Joe, has got this little thing. What's that called?
These are Fletcher-Munson curves, and these.
Sounds like you get them from Aldi.
Yeah, you do. And these, and this, the dark line down the bottom is your threshold of hearing. So basically, at 31.5 hertz, you need it to be about 70 dB for you to hear it. But at 1K, you don't need much at all. It's at zero basically. So it's a perception that that all the frequencies, for them to sound equal, they have to have different volumes basically.
So how I understand it is that the bass is always heard first, right?
Well, not necessarily first. It's something that gives you
has to be more most. I mean, not first, but
Yeah.
for the way we experience sound is that
1K, the mid range is what you hear first.
right. Okay,
That's where
that's
that's
first
where your
sound.
hearing is drawn to straight away.
Right, and this is how we can pick someone's voice out in the middle of a crowd.
Yeah. Well,
And how to-
orchestras have this big dip between 2000 hertz and 4000 hertz, 2 to 4K, and the voices naturally just sit there. So that's why you can hear an opera singer quite well over an orchestra
Yeah, right, with no real amplification.
with no real amplification,
Right.
because that little particular part of the spectrum is reserved for the vocalist.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it was just learning that EQ, well, not in EQ, learning what's it called again?
Fletcher-Munson curves. Or ISO.
The
something like
Flunken, yeah, yeah. Learning about that, I think, was really, really good to understand that normal listening is not like this. When you experience sound, it's there's a curve to it. Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So anyway, I found it cool, nerding out on all this kind of stuff. 48 seems to be the buzz. Yes, 88 too. 20 years back, I worked in a radio station. Excellent, cool, man. It's FM now these days. Excellent. We used to set up desks on 1K. Yes. There's a good argument for better oversampling by using 48K and higher.
Is there? What's the argument, Graham?
Okay. Yeah. 1K is a good reference tone. So on Rick Beato's channel, there was a great video about one of his techs. She had like incredible hearing because most people can't hear over 12K.
Golden ears, yeah.
Yeah, golden ears. I think she could hear up to like 16K.
Well, that's not unusual for a young kid.
Oh, right.
20K is a baby hears a 20K.
20K.
Yeah. And then
When they say they do that, I mean, what do? They ask the baby, hey, can you hear 20K? What does the baby do?
put 20K up and see if they scream.
Oh, okay. I thought they were going to answer a question. Okay. Like, where? Yes. So, anyway, the analysis was done is that most people can't tell. This is why MP3 still exists.
Yeah.
Is that they can't tell from the degradation. And recording at 24-bit and 196K, at the moment, the way we experience music, like through Spotify and all these other different platforms, they all have their own unique algorithms. Who's the best algorithm at the moment? Isn't it Apple Music? Who knows?
Who knows?
Let's
Just
pick-
they'll have their own, FLAC, but anyway.
Yeah.
FLAC.
Yeah, FLAC files. Yeah, I've got some FLAC files. Women can hear longer than men upper frequently. Okay.
Possibly, yeah.
Yep. So, what is excuse the psycho autocorrect? Yeah, fair enough. So with Graham, there's a good argument over sampling.
Well, seriously, like if you can tell the difference between 44.1 and 88.2 or 96 point whatever it is, you're doing really well, because I used to record all my stuff at 88.2, and with great reference speakers, I could just hear a difference in reverbs, basically. Just everything else is much the same, and then it all comes, then you go from 88.2 down to MP3,
Right.
and it's basically destroys whatever you've done, basically.
Right. Okay. So you're saying the degradation from actually resampling it too. Yeah. That's what I was saying. That at the moment there's a we just have to wait for technology to catch up to how we experience music. Like vision, like we used to have like black and white TVs. Now we have like $4,000 TVs that you rec live on air. That I actually did. So we have here less harmonic distortion folding back into the audible range due to the algorithm being used. Over to you, Joe. You can answer that one.
Well, I'd like to see you hear the less harmonic distortion, because seriously, like it's, you're not really. It's of no great importance, really. 44.1 is just as good as 48 and 88.2. It's just there's nothing over the top of that.
Fair enough. So does that answer your question, Graham?
No, Graham's got his thing, but I'll have to look that one up. But I'm quite sure that I read many places and that it's the when they crunch the numbers back, it becomes really awkward. So yeah, look, I don't think it's neither here nor there.
Okay.
To be quite honest, and 48 was always a video thing.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. The actually using a spectrum analyzer, from that curve, the Malenko,
Fletcher Munson curves.
And one job. When we use the spectrum analyzer just to check the mix visually, right at the end of mixing, because I must say, doing this process, I've always looked at the sound, looked at it and see what it's doing and trying to find it, and not really sit back and use my ears. So it was a really, really good exercise to sit back and use the SSL strips. No visual stimulus. You have to sit there, close your eyes, and actually really listen to what's going on. Having said that, at the end of the mix, we check the spectrum analysis. So what were you looking for in that?
Oh, basically how well balanced it was, the bottom end, the mids, and the top end. Basically that was
triple checking.
Just triple checking to see what you're hearing is what it was coming up electronically, so to speak.
Yeah, because we did find there was a 2K bump in the vocals when we readjusted and automated everything.
Yeah, Graham said he's just trying to justify his own use of 48K, mate. Use whatever you want, if that's what you like, as long as it sounds good at the end. Remember, it all gets crunched down to 44 or down to an MP3.
Right, cool. And this one here, good budget mics used for vocal and instrument.
Oh, geez, good budget mics. Well, for instruments, you can't go past the 57, really.
Right.
You could use a 57 for everything. You can use a 57 for a kick. All you need to do is just turn on the bottom end.
Yeah.
That's a good all-around mic. You'll need a nice condenser mic is good for vocals. There's plenty around. Rode make really good condenser mics. There's plenty of that you can listen. You don't need to spend $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on a vocal mic.
A Neumann or something.
Yeah. Coles, whatever.
Yep. And actually maybe going back to the instruments, what's the best way to record a guitar amp?
Well, depends on what sound you want. You could use a ribbon, you can use a condenser, you can use just 57. So it depends on what you're recording, what sort of sound you're after, all that sort of stuff.
What about recording an amp in the room in wide stereo overheads? Have you ever done that?
Unless you're capturing the sound of the room, why would you do that? Because it's one amp sitting in the middle of the room.
So it's a mono signal. Yep.
Unless you've got a really spacious sounding room and you want to capture the room, you would capture the room separately with the amp.
Okay, that's cool. Just asking. And any other questions? Because we've probably got about 15 minutes. So please ask any more questions you'd like answered about mixing per se. So with the automation and the effects, I was actually quite surprised, just touching on again, how many less effects, and then with the guitar solo, we ended up having no effects to sit right up the front. So was that really a done thing was it all just contextual? You just have to wait till all the parts sit in and see if we're going to have a dry.
For me, it's a matter of sitting everything dry to see where it all lands, and then thinking about where you want to hear that particular artist or the band. If you want to hear it in a big room, small room, you want to hear it in a club or anything like that. So I usually set the ambience after I hear the actual sounds rather than beforehand. And for me, effects shouldn't be actually heard. They should actually just put something in its space.
Yeah. What near photos are quite cool.
Well, it depends. Most engineers would swear by NS10s, the Yamaha NS10s, but they sound awful. You would never ever use hi-fi speakers for monitors, because they're there to make everything sound nice. What you need is a good set of reference speakers, and ones that make ugly frequencies sound ugly, so you know that they're ugly. And also, another thing with monitors, it really is what you get used to.
Yeah, and that and for this exercise, I've just had acoustic. Just made up another new word. Acoustic treatment installed. Mr. Marshall assisted with that, and getting your ears used to the new sonic space is the first step, and then secondly is using reference material to calibrate your ears, because once taking the mix out of the room, it can be quite different. Very different.
Yes, it is.
And what else have we got here? So any more questions, please type them in.
What headphones do I like?
Oh, headphones.
Well, I've got two sets of Sennheisers. One are reasonably flat, and the other one have a bit of a bass boost. There's a lot of nice ones around. Sony make a good set of headphones. The Bayers are not too bad.
770s.
Yep.
Which one are these?
Yep.
Sennheiser?
They're mainly used for DJs, but I like them.
Because Joe's a DJ.
Yeah.
Wacka,
Wacka, wacka. Wacka, wacka. What do you use? You use Bayers, I think. Yeah, whatever.
I use them so much I don't even know where I put them.
Yeah.
No, I actually had them last night when I was out judging the Battle of the Buskers. Yeah, 770s, DT 770s.
Yep.
I don't even know.
Again, they're like monitors. It's what you get used to, and they're the best things to know. Is that whatever you buy, you can buy some really cheap monitors, reference speakers, but you have to know what they sound like. And we get back to referencing. Always play something that you know sounds good, or has been recognised as being good. Dark Side of the Moon is one.
Yeah, great album.
Yeah, it's probably the pinnacle of mixes and mastering.
Okay, well, maybe the last few minutes, can we just maybe talk about producing decisions?
Mm-hmm.
So this is not so much or recording and mixing, but as a producer, what are you listening for? Because I know with my experience, you told me to do a lot of things differently. So what would be?
I think cohesion of everything as a particular sound is pretty important. So everything sounds like it belongs with each other as far as a unit goes. That includes what's being played, how it's being played, what instruments you're using. So everything has to sort of like gel together and be harmonious, if you like to call it that.
And simplification of rhythms?
Well, yeah, we did a little bit of that. We certainly split a few rhythms up and made it a little bit more interesting for the listener. Again, play what you normally don't play. So.
Yeah. Okay. What's this is? They are not listening to you. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I like what you said. You play what you normally don't play. But as a producer, what how do you make the decision of what's the most unique thing that's going on or what's missing?
Well, as a producer, the first thing, you're just another set of ears, right? Because you're not close to the music. You're hearing it maybe for the first time, and you have a particular bias, or perhaps you're aware of something that they're not aware of, and you try and fix that. So you're trying to put the artist in its best light, basically, as a producer, and you're trying to get the best out of their songs, best out of their performances.
Okay, and running the recording session as a producer, how do you get the best out of the performer?
Try and get as much passion out of their performance without being personal.
Too late? No. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again.
Yeah, there's a lot of do it agains. It's not quite right. But look, in saying that, the first thing I always ask the musicians, what did you feel about it? How did you think you played it?
That's a good point. You do that.
You know, like
Right.
if you turned around and said, "Oh, look, I played it fantastically," and I thought, well, maybe not, but it usually they'll tell you, "Oh, I made a mistake here," or "I made a mistake there," or "I didn't quite hit that hard enough," or you know, "I missed that intro on the guitar." Everybody knows if they've made a mistake because they know how they want to play it, and that's the first thing I asked. How do you go about it? What did you think about your take?
That's true because you said that to me. Okay, so the first thing is actually getting the subject to reflect themselves.
Yeah.
Which is a psychoanalysis 101, really, isn't it? So secondly, what if they're, duck diving and can't get the take and was just 5 seconds away from a meltdown?
Break time.
Go to lunch.
Go to lunch. Let's have a break.
Yep.
Let's get out of here. You're tired. And that happens, like after 2 hours of constant concentration, you without a break, you really get tired. So I always have a break after we set up, and after the first few takes. A lot of musicians are very nervous, so we usually have a break after the first couple of takes. They have a listen to what they've played, and they can get an understanding of what the process is. You go out, have a chat, have a coffee, whatever. We go back in, and then we start, and we get down to the nitty gritty.
And what about, what if one member is not doing something?
Such as?
I don't know, one member in the band can't get it. So do you simplify the part? Or so here's the idea, everyone wants to play it over here, but how do we wind it back to make sure the music is musical?
Well, you never try and get a player to play above his ability. Never try and do that, because it never works. Like you sit, you're flogging.
That's a straight arrow.
You're flogging a dead horse. Like if they can't play something, they can't play something. So you have to simplify things.
Right.
And I've done that plenty of times. Like I've had some really basic musicians in the studio, and all they can do is play chords, but they can't play anything else. And you have to try and get them to play the best they can.
So therefore, you're actually writing the parts on the fly.
No, I don't never write. I always suggest that this is missing.
Right. Okay, well maybe give coaching to the parts on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I did with you. Like we need this sort of sound of this sort of solo.
Yeah. Or with this solo, it's on another track. Working title, Could I Be? I'm doing a slide thing with one hand and sliding with the other hand. So I haven't seen this technique before, so trying a new technique. I should give it a name, really. What should I call it?
Double-handed slide.
Double-handed slide.
I
should call it the slip and slide.
Yes.
Slip and slide.
Yes.
It's kind of weird, but anyway. And what about one? We got 5 more minutes. So if you got any questions about producing and recording, but I think we're on to the producing part. So what's a producing rock and roll failure story or something that didn't go quite right? It's got to be funny though.
Me?
Because you work with some big names. Are we allowed to name drop yet?
No.
He's so modest. He's so modest.
I think one of the biggest failures I've come across, and I may have mentioned it last time, is the producer who wanted the singer to sing into a bucket. So he put the mic into this plastic bucket, and then somebody asked me what did it sound like. It sounded like somebody singing into a plastic bucket, and that was it. It was the worst thing. And the producer who wanted the ultimate in separation on the drum kit, so he tried to get the drummer to play every single thing separately. Like the kick would be separate, the snare would be separate, then the tom rolls would be separate, the cymbals would be separate. They used to do that in the 80s where the drummer would play just the rhythm and then no cymbals and nothing else, and we'll just leave the toms and the cymbals for a later take so they can get the definition and the clarity out of it. Pretty hard.
Yeah. Wow, it's pretty hard. Bucket list or spew into the bucket. Yes. Okay, and so that was the rock and roll failure. What about? Or is there any other funny stories like that? You had to record something weird.
What did I have to record? No, generally people just come in with their instruments and we record the instruments.
And are you allowed to tell us why you didn't have a studio window in your studio?
Well, the engineer, the acoustics engineer said if you put a window in there, it'll change your acoustics and it'll make it a lot more difficult to get half decent sound out of you. And I thought that was a good idea. But there's another good idea is that I didn't want to see the band. I didn't want the band to see me put my feet up and read the paper while they were recording. Because once you do all your setup and you're ready, you got your sounds, all you do is hit two buttons or one button and you wait 3.5 minutes for them to finish. And the other thing is having a window in also the musicians become self-conscious about somebody watching them while they're trying to do something important. So 3 reasons.
Yeah, right.
And I had a camera basically into the studio and I could see what.
So you still had visual.
Yeah, I still had visual, but they couldn't see me, and it worked really well because for them they were just in a room playing.
Right. Okay. That's pretty good. And your last studio that you actually built, what was most significant about that? Because it was very, very awesome.
Well, the most significant part about that studio was that the control room, no matter where you walked, sounded the same. In most studios, there'll be a bass boost here or a top end frequency poking out here, but no, there it was absolutely flat as a tack. Probably one of the top 3 as far as mixing in the country.
Right. There we go. He's just name dropped something, so he knows what he's doing about with tuning a room and stuff. So that's pretty cool. And how are we going for time? 2 minutes. So, any more questions? What's another funny story? Or maybe inspiration. Like, which mixes inspired you to want to mix better?
All of them.
Okay. I was trying to get at a question you actually explain something. It's just all of them.
Explain. What did you say? Explain what type of mixes I like.
Well, please explain what type of mixes you liked.
I like mixes where there is a lot of depth of field and the instruments are clear as day. I like to hear everything, to the point where you could, if they had a pin drop in a particular song, I could hear that pin drop. So yeah, like, was it Dazed and Confused, the squeaky pedal, things like that.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, squeaky pedals.
You can hear the squeak.
Yeah, have a listen.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, anything that's got clarity in it.
Did they not even try and use WD-40 before they record that?
Don't know. I don't think they even picked it up.
Did Dazed and Confused, did they record that in a hotel room at the bottom of the stairwell where John Boner put the drum kit?
I don't. No, that was levy brakes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, details. But that's a good point, like sonic space. Okay, and is there any examples of up-and-coming mixers should listen to if they want to?
I just like the R&B stuff and all the stuff that they're bringing out lately. I really like an R&B.
You listen to R&B?
Yeah.
Really?
I listen to everything. I really like it.
I didn't even know that. He played. What did you play me just at lunch yesterday? Some with the girl in the rainbow top thing.
Oh, Benny.
Benny.
Yeah, that's great pop. You know.
Yeah. Just amazing eclectic tastes.
Anything that's good.
Yeah.
Anything that's good.
There you go. Anyway, well, I hope that sincerely opened your eyes and ears to a few things. Thank you, everyone that's actually participating. And we will see you again very soon. Joe's off to Sydney soon.
Yep.
And we've got a lot more work to do yet. And thank you for checking in. And when the record comes out, you can have a listen to it and tell me how the mixing went. Because it's been a lot of hours on just this one track. And we get to do it again for the other tracks. But it's been... honestly, it's been eye-opening, or ear-opening, I should say. And, here we go. What's your favourite references?
Favourite reference tracks? Well, these are albums.
Oh, albums.
Dark Side of the Moon, AC/DC, Back in Black, Donald Fagen, Night Flyer, Roxy Music, Avalon, Madonna, Ray of Light.
Yeah, right.
Lots of stuff, some Beck stuff, some Tool, Chemical Brothers. There's lots and lots of stuff out there.
It's exceptionally well mixed.
Yeah, and well mastered too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So, it's been, as I said just before, it's been amazing experience to ride shotgun with the guru who has golden ears, and I've learnt a lot. Who has a very sarcastic sense of humour.
I've got 2 ears.
You got 2 ears, yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.
Bye.